Chapter 1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In the first year of Long Lin, demonic beasts emerged all over the world. The habitable spaces of humans decreased under the sharp claws of the tyrannical demonic beasts, and civilization suffered a huge loss. In the fifth year of Long Lin, the entire population awakened, with Beastmasters as the most common occupation. The so-called Beastmaster had the ability to control demonic beasts for their own use and to serve humans. Against demon beasts that were immune to weapons, only the subdued beasts under the control of a Beastmaster could fight head-on with them. This was also why the Beastmaster was officially recognized as the only occupation in the face of a demon-beast disaster. After all, civilization had been destroyed, and fertile land was scarce. Only by killing demon beasts could humans expand their living space. Yu Guang gathered all this information 10 years after he transmigrated. Initially, he found it hard to accept the premise that we are hunters, and they are the prey. However, the global ecological environment was forced to assimilate by the demonic beasts. Young people were kept in school like livestock. As soon as they turned 18, they were tested to awaken their Beastmaster skills. Then, they had to give up everything for the future of humanity. Yu Guang, who had once read many online novels, remembered that the first time the main character saw the world, he would immediately connect to the external system. However, he was a man who had transmigrated to become an 8-year-old child. For the past 10 years, he would chew on bread and watch the news every day to see which Beastmaster he had to mourn for that day. Yu Guang was completely numb. Even after school, his outlook never changed. Although the knowledge system before and after transmigration was different, with Yu Guang's mature mind, he only needed a week to finish what others were reading for a semester. His speed was as fast as fanning himself with a book. The book's contents seemed to crawl into his head by themselves. His classmates drooled in envy, but only Yu Guang knew it was effortless to obtain the title of top student. The easier it was, the emptier one's heart would be. This day is finally coming to an end. Yu Guang held his head and looked out the window. On the podium, an old lady was drooling while explaining the points to note when becoming a Beastmaster. All of you have read the Beastmaster introduction, right? The requirements to become a Beastmaster were mentioned, so you must read it. Teacher, you better tell us about it. A burly boy raised his hand and spoke. Miss Ni, the homeroom teacher, thought for a moment and said, all right. After all, there aren't many opportunities for me to explain them. Open the first page of the introduction. The first requirement to become a Beastmaster and the most important is a contract. It says here that, if you can sign a master-servant contract with a high-level subdued beast, your future and Beastmaster career will be successful. Then how can we meet a high-level subdued beast? Can we sprinkle some rice on the ground? A mischievous male student asked with a grin, causing the other students to burst into laughter. If you sprinkle rice on the ground and catch a subdued beast, the school will definitely give you a statue. Don't be so naive. Miss Ni continued, signing a contract depends on the situation. Whether you can become a qualified Beastmaster or not depends on your skill. This is also the second condition. The so-called skill was to be able to increase the ability of a subdued beast. A Beastmaster could provide assistance to a subdued beast and fight enemies together with them. Upon hearing the word fight, the blood of the students, who had been imprisoned for a long time, immediately boiled, and their voices rose as they chatted with each other excitedly, sounding like a crowd in a wet market. Be quiet. Miss Ni couldn't even calm down after knocking on the table twice, so she could only use her trump card. Now, I'll pick a student to answer the third condition. In just a second, the classroom was immediately silent. Every student pretended to be serious about reading the introduction, praying in their hearts that the teacher wouldn't call their name. Seeing that the little brats had succumbed to her words, Miss Ni laughed disdainfully. When she glanced down, she suddenly saw Yu Guang, who was absent-mindedly looking out of the window. Yu Guang, is the view outside nice? Answer my question. If you can't answer it, you'll be punished by standing outside. The third condition is space. It can nurture subdued beasts, open up a space for them, and provide them with food, accommodation, clothing, and medical treatment. Yu Guang continued to look out the window as he answered effortlessly. After saying that, he ignored Miss Ni and quickly sat down. He was already very familiar with the conditions to become a beastmaster. This was because he was extremely eager to become a beastmaster and quickly end his boring life as a prisoner. At the center of Feng Jin Academy, where he was from, there was an appraisal stone. Every year, the students' beastmaster skills would be graded and determined, to decide whether they should charge to the frontline or work in logistics. To the students, this was a turning point in their lives. That's correct. Everyone should learn more from Yu Guang. Miss Ni scratched her face awkwardly, then continued to discuss the booklet's contents. The other students covered their mouths and snickered. They thanked Yu Guang for helping them fend off the calamity. They sighed in their hearts that Yu Guang was indeed worthy of being a genius student. With just a glance, he had memorized the contents by heart. Why do we still have to talk about it? Yu Guang sighed impatiently. If we had the time, we would have finished the appraisal long ago. Right at this moment. A flash of inspiration appeared in Yu Guang's optical computer, and an unfamiliar mechanical voice sounded in his ear. God.Tier familiar system has been awakened. Congratulations, host, for successfully activating the system after 10 years of knowledge storage. Binding successful. Congratulations, host, for obtaining a novice gift pack. Reward. SSS.Tier familiar skill, God.Tier familiar bait. The stacked dialogue boxes in front of him made Yu Guang dizzy, while the messages in his ears came one after another. Yu Guang took a deep breath. His heart was racing like 1,000 horses. He quickly opened his SSS. Grade familiar skill, and the ability of the novice gift pack was written inside. Effect 1. Eye of identification, identifies the talent potential of all living creatures. In other words, his eyes were a ruler, and he was a walking appraisal stone. He could identify any living creature within their range. It would be very useful in selecting a good familiar in the future. Effect 2. To be unlocked, conditions to be unlocked, first familiar in the contract, other effects to be awakened. Yu Guang was stunned for a moment. There was still a hidden surprise waiting for him to develop this system. Mystery and the unknown were the driving forces of human exploration, and Yu Guang was no exception. Unlike those intelligent systems that had arranged everything for the host from birth to the 7th level, Yu Guang preferred to explore the future with his actions and wash away the dullness of his life with stormy waves. It feels pretty good. Yu Guang shoved his hands in his pockets, feeling that the sky had become bluer. Just then, he felt a square-shaped hard object in his pocket. He looked around and saw that the other students weren't paying attention to him, including the school's most popular girl sitting next to him, who was also seriously listening to Miss Ni's lecture. Yu Guang carefully took it out and looked at it. It was a cube that looked like a piece of chocolate, with 3 big words written on it. God.Tier familiar bait. He opened the system to look for the effect. God.Tier familiar bait. Establishes contracts with any living being, including God.Tier familiars. Seeing this, Yu Guang was excited. Point 1 had to know that the level of a familiar was directly related to the success of a beastmaster. Would he be helpless and find a low-tier familiar to be a babysitter, or would he be lucky to find a God.Tier familiar and soar to the heavens? Even a fool would know what to do with his eyes closed. However, the higher the level of the familiar, the more difficult it was to sign a contract. However, with the God.Tier familiar bait, Yu Guang's future would be completely different. As long as he hooked his finger, the God.Tier familiar would obediently lie on the ground and beg for his hand. With his hand in his pocket, Yu Guang squeezed the God.Tier familiar bait with great care, and his bulging trouser pocket squirmed slightly. For a moment, he couldn't suppress the smile on his face. At that moment, Cui Anyu turned her head. She was a most popular girl in Feng Jin Academy. Her demeanor was noble and cold, and she had an outstanding aura. Anyone who was within 3 meters of her would feel ashamed of themselves. Therefore, other than Yu Guang, no one dared to sit beside her. Cui Anyu saw that he had a hand in his pocket, and there was a slight smile on her face. She seemed to have thought of something, and her expression changed as she glared at Yu Guang. "You damn hooligan." She pouted and cursed softly. Yu Guang was stunned for a moment. He had a hunch that she had misunderstood something, and it was a huge misunderstanding. "I'm not," as he was about to explain, Miss Ni on the stage clapped her hands and said. "All right, everyone can gather at the door. It's our class's turn to appraise it. Finally, it's about to start." Yu Guang's attention was drawn away. He didn't even bother to explain. He was the first to get up and walk out. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.